A happy non-Raven Sunday to you and yours. It is the 5th of January, 3:38 Eastern here in the late afternoon. Welcome inside the channel. I'm Bobby Trosset, and as always, this is where I bring you Baltimore sports and beyond. It is a victory Sunday after the Ravens put a thumping on the Cleveland Browns in last night's regular season finale. 35-10, of course, was the final. Ravens finish off their season 12-5. Winners of the AFC North for a second consecutive season, clinch the 3 seed, and now await the winner, of course, of Chargers-Raiders, because that will decide who comes to Baltimore in a 3 versus 6 seed matchup on Super Wild Card Weekend, which, of course, is coming up next weekend. First and foremost, though, tough start to the offseason for Cleveland. That's probably a feeling that is all too familiar for Browns fans, but they woke up to the news that offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey has been fired, so the one-year experiment is no longer. And, of course, the Ravens probably pushed that thing across the finish line with the pure domination, particularly in the second half, that last night was in Baltimore, which, of course, was the regular season finale, and they split the season series after Cleveland, of course, won the first of those 2 matchups. Now, as I mentioned, Chargers-Raiders is coming up at 4:25. There really hasn't been anything noteworthy going on in this 1 o'clock window, being that Josh Allen did not play for the Bills. It's been Mitch Trubisky and Mike White. They are currently trailing the Patriots in New England 16-20 with just over 5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. So really the games that matter for seeding implications are coming up at 4:25. And so here's the deal. If the Los Angeles Chargers beat the Vegas Raiders, the Ravens will host the Pittsburgh Steelers for the second time in, about a month or so? And that'll be next weekend. If the Chargers lose to the Raiders, which they certainly are not favored to do, the Ravens will once again face off in a hardball. It'll be Jim versus John, and this time it'll be in Baltimore and not that Monday night matchup, of course, which was in LA earlier this season. So if you're just wondering, if you've been thinking about the scenarios that are in play going into today, that's what's going on. And as we await all of that, I thought Ryan Clark, ESPN analyst, former Pittsburgh Steeler, put together a nice closing argument for Lamar Jackson's MVP candidacy and why Derrick Henry's historic season and just his sheer presence alone should not take away from said candidacy.
With this, everybody's going to point to Derrick Henry and say Derrick Henry is the reason why Lamar Jackson can't win it. Well, when you have a 1,900-yard rusher, but you also pass for over 4,000 yards, you also pass for 40 touchdowns, you only throw 4 interceptions, and on top of that, rush for 900 yards as well, it says that there was enough football to go around, even with that rusher in my backfield, that I was able to be what is transcendent at the position. And I think the other piece for Lamar Jackson is his evolution. You look at last year, you did have to piece together moments and look at what he did against plus 500 teams and say, okay, even with these statistics, here is why he's better than Brock Purdy. Here is why his season was better than Dak Prescott. I don't believe you have to do that this year. This team faced adversity, and in that adversity, Lamar Jackson got better. In that adversity, Lamar Jackson stepped up and became not only a better player, but a better leader. And we always ask our MVPs to elevate the people around you. There's never been a wide receiver in Baltimore Ravens history to make it to the Pro Bowl. And Zay Flowers, who seemed as surprised as anyone that he did make it because of Lamar Jackson.
So Ryan Clark doing a good job, an exquisite job, really, of ensuring that the public understands and acknowledges that a lot of these career seasons that guys are having around Lamar Jackson, right, as supporting cast members, maybe wouldn't be having those types of prolific seasons if not for Lamar's presence. So why is it in some voters' minds that Derrick's presence takes away from Lamar's candidacy, but not vice versa? These two are complementary pieces, And that's something that RG3 was shouting from the rooftops yesterday on social media. He tweeted, "Stop using Derrick Henry to discredit Lamar Jackson." Henry got hit in the backfield on 50% of his runs last year. This year, it's down to 39%. He's more than doubled his yards before contact, and it's because of Lamar's influence. Watch the dang tape, and you will see how often linebackers, safeties, and defensive linemen are out of their gap and often chasing Lamar on under center runs, shotgun runs, and zone read looks. This has been the easiest 1,921 rushing yards Derrick Henry has ever run for in his career. Lamar and Derrick are the match made in heaven that I predicted they would be in the offseason. They complement each other and are great teammates. Lamar has the second highest passer rating in NFL history with 41 passing touchdowns and won the AFC North. He should be the NFL MVP. That from Robert Griffin III yesterday. I covered this on last night's live stream, but just in case you missed it, Derrick was having a little bit of fun with his fellow Heisman Trophy Award winning brother and quote tweeted RG3, who spelled Derrick as normal folks do. I'm not saying Derrick Henry's spelling is abnormal, but I think you see a lot more D-E-R-E-Ks than D-E-R-R-I-C-Ks. And the King made sure to remind RG3 of that and quote tweeted him and said, "First of all, bruh, spell my name right, LOL." And we screaming MV3 over this way, something that Derrick has been pounding the table on for months now for his running mate, Lamar. And RG3, of course, having fun with it, tweeting back at the King saying, "I fixed it, my Heisman brother. It should be MV3 everywhere. Tired of the lames on national TV trying to pin y'all against each other." So again, kind of taking aim at those in the national space who have tried to discredit Lamar's candidacy and greatness this year because of the King, despite these MVP numbers being significantly greater than his past two campaigns. And RG3 wasn't done there. Also tweeting out yesterday, teams worry about Lamar's legs because he's the all-time leading rusher for quarterbacks in NFL history, but it's his arm that's torching defenses. 41 touchdowns this season. Second greatest single-season QB passer rating ever. Career high in passing touchdowns and leads the NFL in touchdown to interception ratio. He's also the first QB in NFL history to throw for over 4,000 yards and run for 800 yards in a single season. Give him his MVP. So RG3 doing what he does best. He consistently has had Lamar's back. And again, this is not to take away whatsoever from what the King has become. You got two finishers in the same backfield, both of whom are on bona fide trajectories to end up as first ballot Hall of Famers in Canton one day. And look at what the King has done this year in season number 1 with Baltimore in finishing moments. I'm talking about in the second half, and I'm talking about of overtime. And these metrics in parentheses are where he ranks league-wide in these respective categories. He ranks second in rushing yards, just total in the second half and overtime of games this season with over 1,100. He ranks first in yards after contact with over 700. He's tied for first in rushing touchdowns with 8. He's just outright first in first downs with 55. Outright first with missed tackles forced, 56. And second in yards per carry at 6.6. This guy has been as advertised, and he literally is de-aging. He turned 31 yesterday and had 130 rushing yards in the second half. This is why you brought him to Baltimore. There were plenty of conversations as the Ravens sort of scuffled out of the gate several months back to begin this season in terms of his usage. But the reality is, this could very well be the missing piece of the puzzle that the Ravens so desperately needed last year. They're going to have to go on the road in order to go to where they want to be and get to where they want to be, assuming that they can get past Super Wild Card Weekend and likely the Pittsburgh Steelers. From there, probably a trip to Buffalo, probably a trip to Kansas City before it's all said and done, and we know what those destinations are all about this time of year. It is cold. It is tundra-like. It is windy. May the best man win. And maybe, just maybe, that best man is Lamar Jackson this year. I mentioned the numbers being significantly higher in most categories compared to his first 2 MVP seasons. And here they are. Over 5,000 total yards in 2024 compared to 4,499 last year, 4,333 in 19. He's got 45 total touchdowns this year to 29 last year and 43 in 19. The passer rating is historic, 119.6 compared to the 102.7 from last year and the 113.3 number from 2019. And then, of course, records important as well, especially because maybe, just maybe, that's what it comes down to, even though just 1 seed separates these 2 candidates, right? Buffalo is the 2 seed. Baltimore is the 3 seed. Lamar has been so consistent with his winning in the regular season. 13 wins notched in his first and second MVP seasons, respectively. And, of course, a 12-5 campaign, which was just capped off last night with a 35-10 convincing win over the Cleveland Browns. And if you want to question what they had to do in order to reach 12-5, well, Sarah tallied up a few things earlier this morning. And she wrote, Ravens had the toughest strength of schedule of AFC playoff teams, and they have the best strength of victory. Lamar and the offense kept things afloat, while the 32nd ranked passing defense, at least through the first 10 or 11 weeks or so, and of course, Justin Tucker, found their footing. Now they're AFC North champs, MVP voters, consider accordingly. Sarah making sure that is known earlier this morning before heading off to church. And remember, this team is battle tested. After starting 0-2, and right out of the gate facing teams like the reigning champion Kansas City Chiefs on opening night, the Dallas Cowboys on the road, the Bengals at home. Or was that at home or not? I can't remember if they were at home or not all the way back then. You, of course, had to see the Bills on Sunday Night Football, which, of course, went in their favor. The first of 2 matchups with the Bengals came in Week 5, and that was on the road in Cincy. Washington is a playoff team. Tampa Bay is a playoff team. So all of a sudden, the first 7 weeks, and you look back at this schedule, and you take Vegas out of the equation, which is funny because that was a loss. I mean, you're looking at, 5 or 6 postseason teams right out of the gate. Now, you didn't know it then. You certainly know it now. They clobbered a postseason team that's at least in the playoff picture right now in the Denver Broncos in Week 9. They relatively handily beat the Los Angeles Chargers on primetime on a short week, of course, going across. I guess technically it wasn't a short week. Going into Philadelphia was the short week leading into the bye week. And then, of course, the gauntlet that several teams had to do, which was 3 games in 11 days. Handled that with class, charisma. And as a result, 4-0 after that Week 14, very late bye week. Now the Ravens are in the driver's seat. Likely will be the Pittsburgh Steelers coming up here next weekend. You win that game, probably heading to Buffalo, and it will be earned. If this team ends up making it to where they want to go, which of course is a trip to New Orleans, it will have been earned. The AFC playoff picture is no joke. Captain Hard hit me with a super chat today. Appreciate you, Captain. The Ravens should extend him this offseason, maybe another year. I think Derrick has proven he has at least 3 more years of elite running, maybe more. Speaking to Derrick's current contract situation, he is under contract for 1 more year. I believe it was a 2-year, $16 million deal off the top of my head that he signed on day 2 of free agency last March. Look, this is a guy who just turned 31, as I've mentioned a couple times yesterday, and he literally is an ascending player at 31. It's just been remarkable. It's been a remarkable display of standing the test of time. And I guess that's probably the most important part of this entire thing, given the history of running backs, especially recent history of running backs. and how guys tend to fall off cliffs. Today is brought to you by my friends at Preston Automotive Group, and at Preston, Bobby Baltimore subscribers receive 2 exclusive offers. $500 towards a new or pre-owned vehicle. You can get started today by clicking on the link that's a pinned comment right now in the live chat or at the top of the show notes. You can also buy 4 tires with Preston, and you'll receive 50% off your alignment. And if you go to that link that's included in a couple different spots as you're watching today, and you get taken to here, which is my specific landing page at prestonmotor.com, you'll find that those offers that I just mentioned are smack dab right in the middle for your liking. You can contact Preston for more information by filling out this form right here, or you can just get the search process started, narrowing it down by make, model, keyword, price, vehicle condition, year, so on and so forth. When you join the Preston family, you can get in on some of their perks like I do all the time. Mobile service, whenever I'm heading up back home to the upstate New York area, I fit an oil change in or just make sure everything's together. Awesome, seamless website to work. And it's just been a fantastic experience working with Preston over the last 14 months and driving around in my Bobby Baltimore Bronco. You've got over 2,000 vehicles to shop from. Home delivery is available. You can get started today by visiting prestonmotor.com or just simply scan the QR code in the upper right-hand corner. I want to continue to say thank you to Preston for all of their support. It was awesome of them that they were kind enough to do the ticket giveaway. I just met Andrew Sapala. Shout out Andrew. He was our ticket giveaway winner who joined me at the Preston tailgate yesterday, pregame show. And by the way, for Wild Card Weekend, whenever this game is, probably going to be primetime since it's Lamar. I'm gearing myself up for primetime. And if that ends up being the case, you already know we'll be at Be More Around Town yet again for a pregame show tailgate. You can get your passes at BeMoreAroundTown.com, and we will know probably later today who the Ravens will face and host Super Wild Card Weekend. Well, Roquan Smith quietly became the youngest player in NFL history to notch 1,000 career tackles during Saturday's game against the Cleveland Browns. I felt like that was sort of like quiet. It was sort of like unmentioned. I mean, am I the only one that felt like that was swept under the rug a little bit? Congratulations are in order for Roquan Smith. So here's the deal. Got over 600 of you concurrently watching today. I would love for you to please like this video on your way in, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification, hit that notification bell as you listen to me burp if you haven't already done so you can be notified of when I'm dropping my daily live content. Some of you are saying that Final Resolution has reappeared. Is that true? If so, where is he? Because he owes me a guest visit. And I've kept my receipts on him, and he has just found his way into the shadows, quivered in a sense, declined my invitation. And to me, that's just not going to cut it. Final, if you're here, or maybe he's going as that analog digital who seems to be trolling the shit out of the chat right now. So maybe that's it. And if that ends up being the case, we got to make sure that Analog is aware of what takes place when you come into the chat and start barking. So Analog, great to see you. I'm going to call you Anal, actually, for the rest of this episode, just because I like nicknames. So Anal, I would love for you to come on the show. What I will do is once we get through the content, you can have your voice be illuminated through the channel. I will send a link into the chat. And if you're willing, if you're able, if you got the moxie, if you got the chops, I'd love to go split screen with you and get a little back and forth going. All right, Anal? I look forward to chatting with you. Matt hits me with a super chat and says, Allen hurt his MVP case today. Trubisky and White have a 64% completion, 141 total yards, and 0 interceptions with a lot of starters out versus Allen with starters, 55% completion, 199 total yards, and 1 interception versus the Pats. Yeah, they weren't going to play him today. Did he start the game so that he can extend his streak? I have the game on right now, but did he do that? I heard that that's what he was going to do so that he could extend his record of consecutive games started. But yeah, they went with a combination of Trubisky and Mike White and currently trail the Patriots under the 2-minute warning now, 23-16. That is a road game, and Mike White is under center for them right now. So they had the 2 seed locked up. You kind of felt like this is where they were heading, and that's what they chose to do. Anal, where are you at? We got one more topic to get to, and then you're coming on here, whether you like it or not. All right. And if anybody can find final resolution in the meantime, that would be fantastic as well. 425 games, just about 25 minutes or so away from kickstarting. And I, for one, certainly looking forward to that so we can start to make our plans accordingly. For Super Wild Card Weekend, there will be yet another home playoff game. Well, I'll tell you what, this happened rather quietly on Saturday against the Cleveland Browns. Roquan Smith became the youngest player in NFL history to reach the 1,000 career tackle milestone. Felt like that was kind of swept under the rug. That's a pretty big deal for Rowe. Clearly, some of the adjustments that they've made, including demoting Trenton Simpson, have gone in his favor. Doesn't mean that Trenton, a second-year player out of Clemson, first-year starter, doesn't have a bright future ahead of him, but clearly using a combination of Chris Board, Malik Harrison at times has settled things down and allowed Roquan to play more freely. And of course, on the back end, it goes without saying, Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington have been maybe the biggest piece of this puzzle since week 10, week 11, and the back end of this defense, and really a trickle-down effect, which became contagious from level 3, 2, 1 down to 1. That's all gone into it as well. Roquan talked about what's coming up this weekend, and that is a super wild card matchup it will be a rematch. It's either going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Los Angeles Chargers, both of whom, of course, have already matched up with the Ravens this year. Here's Agent Zero, courtesy of Bowie TV.
Lost confidence one bit, despite what people say. At the end of the day, it's all about each and every guy in this locker room, and we believe in each other before anybody else believes in us. So that's our mindset, continuing to just stack, go out, prove ourselves to ourselves at the end of the day, and it's just going to show who we are, the more games we play. And it's going to get started next week. Whoever on the schedule, you got to come to the bank and you got to see about it.
How big is that to have playoff football fears?
Oh, you love playoff games at home. It's definitely an advantage for the defense, in my perspective. Like, there's a lot of things the offense have to do with the crowd noise and the things of that nature. So it's something that doesn't go unnoticed, and I love being able to play at home, give me a lot of little tips and feeds.
Agent Zero, again, courtesy of Bowie TV, got his swagger back this year. Hasn't had a lot of those sound bites that have went viral, courtesy of, us last year, right? When he would come on the Vault weekly, and man, he had his inner Ray Lewis going last year on our show and just about every single media session that he partook in. But this year, I wonder if it's been a concerted effort to kind of keep it a little bit more business-like, or maybe, just maybe, because it was a historic season last year, he was sort of loving every part of how high-flying that defense was on all three levels. And obviously this year has been a little bit more of a struggle, but this is a team, defensively-wise, that's rounding into form and peaking at the right time. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity prior to things getting going this week, and all the lead up that will go into Super Wild Card Weekend, with revisiting the Marcus Williams conversation, because I had a tremendous interview with Jimmy Smith. I had an opportunity to sit down with him. His son, Jimmy Jr., was running around the Be More Around Town pregame show tailgate, and maybe some of you caught this live. But I wanted to pick it apart because I honestly didn't even know this interview was scheduled. It was very spontaneous. Jimmy was there. He's getting ready to move back to Maryland, which he shared with us, which is awesome. And this full conversation can be found, by the way, in my archive section, the best of Bobby Baltimore clips. But what I've done is I've grabbed two different clips for you that I think we can kind of have a conversation surrounding the secondary. And of course, when Marcus Williams was benched earlier this season as the third highest cap hit on this team, right? The former $70 million man and a big free agency splash in 2022. It kind of sent a shockwave, I'm sure, not only throughout that building, but throughout much of the fan base. And our eyes told us one thing, but it's different to hear it from a player's perspective. And I thought Jimmy did a really good job of breaking down how this came to be. How did the demise of Marcus Williams come to be in Baltimore this year? Jimmy, courtesy of yesterday's interview at the Be More Around Town tailgate.
Say right now, obviously it's not to Marcus as he is a sorry player or something like that. I didn't know who he was before, and when they brought him in, I obviously did my studying afterwards. Like he's an interception guy. He's an interception guy, so I'm thinking that's what he does. And then when he first got here, he got a lot of interceptions really quickly, and then when he got his shoulder hurt, the tackling started coming up, and then the tackling kind of came into this year. And one thing I can tell you, like I said, about safeties and John Harbaugh, if you're not a tackling safety, I don't care who you are. I've watched him get on Eric Weddle. I watched him get on Ed Reed. I watched him get on every safety that's ever played for the Ravens, as long as I've been there. So when I see the bad angles and I see, I knew immediately like Harbaugh is dying inside because he loves secondary. That's his thing. He loves special teams is his thing, but every day he talks to the secondary because he loves it. So watching what was going on was more of a, I bought this. I bought this, so I have to spend my money on this. Yeah. I have to use this person, but I don't know if that person necessarily fit our style of defense. I'm not saying he's a bad player, none of that, because obviously he got $70 million. That's not an easy feat to do. So he showed what he needed to show to get there. But when it came down to actually playing our defense, which our safeties are rotational. They're not. You're just not a strong safety. You're just not a free safety. We don't play that here. So you got to be strong safety sometime, and you got to be free. And I think that was what I see as a football player. I see like, oh, he's a true free safety. And by true free safety, I mean he wants to be deep the whole time and just cover deep. When he has to start going down and covering and starting, I didn't see the want to hit people. I didn't see the intent to like cover deep. Like it just, for me, it was like sloppy play.
But what's so interesting is that last year, speaking of want and desire, he played through that shoulder. So why, or did he?
Oh, so that's what I just said. Yes, I played through a shoulder injury, but I'm not a tackler anyway. I didn't want to tackle him, no way. That sounds bad to say. But when you watch tape and you're watching this year, like I'm a fan now. I get to sit at home and watch the game, and I watch some of the angles he takes, like the one that Jamar Chase has only killed one team in the league.
And he did it twice this year.
He does it every year. No, he does it every year.
Every year, yeah.
I love Marlon to death. That's my brother. We know that is his toughest matchup.
Part of my conversation with Super Bowl champion and former first-round cornerback Jimmy Smith at yesterday's pregame show tailgate, the Be More Around Town lot, which is located at 801 West Austin on the Fed side of M&T Bank Stadium. I would encourage you to join me for next weekend's show. Would love to see you guys out there. But some interesting comments from Jimmy indeed here. Perhaps getting after Marcus Williams' lack of positional flexibility, which certainly may have contributed to his demise in Baltimore this season. His future is certainly uncertain. Maybe the only thing that's a certainty is that his NFL future will not be in Baltimore coming up next year. I would be stunned, barring something unforeseen. But the quote that stood out to me from Jimmy on Marcus, I didn't see the want. I didn't see the want to hit people. I didn't see the intent to cover deep. For me, it was sloppy play. And another thing that Jimmy mentioned early in the interview as well is that part of the reason why Marcus was brought in and earned that contract from Baltimore was his playmaking ability, was the splash interceptions that he had a knack for. And I thought in year one, you saw a lot of those. You saw the kind of player that Eric DeCosta and company were willing to invest in. But due to injury, due to perhaps, again, this lack of acceptance for what John Harbaugh and his defensive staff expects from their safeties, perhaps that was all contributing factors that sent this thing south in a spiral quickly to the point where this guy has been a healthy scratch for 2 months. He's the third highest cap hit guy on this on this team. And certainly the Ravens probably wouldn't be playing Ardarius Washington otherwise. That was another thing that Jimmy mentioned in the conversation. Like, the chance that Ardarius is getting right now and taking full advantage of it is a rarity. Ardarius is 5'8", $170, soaking wet. And yet he is playing a key role and has brought legitimate calmness on the back end alongside Kyle Hamilton. Jimmy was like, no other situation, no other team is he starting. And that's no disrespect to Ardarius. He's an undrafted rookie with the heart of a lion. He's been around the system and been around the program for many years now, dealt with his fair share of injuries. But when his number was called, unlike Deontay Johnson, he's risen to the occasion and become a key piece for Zach Orr's defense. And of course, a key piece to what's become a remarkable turnaround since week 10, week 11. As for Brandon Stephens, this is a contract year for Brandon, meaning he is set to hit free agency this offseason. And after a career year a season ago, Brandon has had a massive target on his back throughout pretty much all of this season. And I asked Jimmy point blank, give me your breakdown. You're watching this as a fan now in your retirement life. What's up with Brandon? And technically wise, why is it that sometimes from a ball skill standpoint, he loses vision? He lacks a certain level of ball awareness. He's always stride for stride. He's always attached to the hip. He's a smart player. But why is it that sometimes, oftentimes this year, he has lost sight of the football? Here's Jimmy.
Secondary, I think Stephens went through his Marcus Peters phase. Honestly, like, somebody gets targeted, right? I'm not going to target him. I'm not going to target him. That person gets targeted. So sometimes it is the fact that you're not playing as good, or the fact that they just say, hey, you know what? We're just going to go at him. He doesn't have to have confidence. So I think Brandon Stephens has probably showed the most of any DB we have. Wow, like, what's relentless resilience, because he has been getting targeted, and when they won first round, they come after him. But the fact that we got Tre'Davious White and they kept Brandon starting lets you know that, like, he's a guy that can keep working towards what he's going to. When the ball gets in the air, he finds that calmness and just makes the play, which he does sometimes. But that's what they target the most. The difference between Brandon Stephens is ball skills. It's not that he's not there. It's not that he's not fast enough. It's not that he won't tackle. He does all those things. But when that ball's in the air and that panic hits your heart at corner, it's a different feeling. The ball hits the air for him, panic settles in, I think, a little bit, and he doesn't just gently turn around, go up and grab it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's right there. Like, he turns around, the ball hits his elbow. Like, he's not there. It's just when teams are targeting like that, it's very hard to gain confidence, because you're like, every game I'm getting 12 targets. Yeah. And they're getting like 8, right? And then you read one thing or somebody says one thing, you start to, your confidence goes down. As a cornerback, your confidence is probably, besides your athletic ability, which is number one, I would say your confidence is 1B. Like, you need to be just as confident as you are athletic to play corner. if he's a high draft pick, they give him another year because, okay,
It's a
you
contract.
know what I mean?
It's a contract year for him.
Exactly. So he had to battle something that, you know, a lot of corners, you go through this. You go through a part where people think, hey, he's vulnerable, right? And the thing is, once somebody does one thing to you as a corner, they're going to do it to you for the next 5 games. If you can't stop it, they'll do it to you all season. So his thing is not being sticky in coverage. It's not doing it's literally having the calmness and the patience when that ball's in the air to locate it, right? Like once you get on a I'm getting beat, you start playing a little bit more tense, a little tight. And I felt like he went through a little bit of that. I think they brought Tre'Davious in. Tre'Davious had a couple good plays on some fades, right? And then Brandon, all of a sudden, you start seeing Brandon in the game. And I watch, obviously, them the most. I watched Brandon get even more closer in tight coverage. Like, I don't agree with every PI that they call on Brandon. But he is the one that they target. Just like Marcus was the one that they targeted a few years ago when it was all of us. It's just, if you have laps in your game, your coverage, your game, they're going to come after you. So for him, it's like, oh, you're good. You're really good. But I'm always betting 50-50 that when I throw that ball, I don't know if you're going to turn around. And right now, he's 50-50. I don't know if he will. Yeah. I don't know if he. So that I thought was a big improvement in the last 10 weeks because he's now been in the call. If it is the PI, I'm like, I don't know about that one. Before, I'm like, oh, my God, that's bad. Now I'm like, oh, no, he's right there. Like, I can see his growth.
Some great insight there from Jimmy Smith on Brandon Stevens. Here's part of what he had to say. Again, this full conversation can be found in the best of clips. Go back to the archive section on my YouTube channel. Quote, the ball hits the air for him. Panic settles in. I think a little bit, and he doesn't just gently turn around, go up and grab it. If you have lapses in your game, they're going to come after you. So for him, it's like, oh, you're good. You're really good. But I'm always betting 50-50 that when I throw that ball, I don't know if you're going to turn around. And right now, he's 50-50. 50-50, not going to exactly cut it in the postseason. 50-50 makes you a bit weary of what could be coming in the postseason. And I see some of you in the chat echoing that exact sentiment. Could this come back to bite them against elite playmaking offenses with elite playmaking playmakers? I don't know if the Jamar Chases of the world will make it. Cincinnati obviously has done all it can do and now needs a little bit of help from around the league in order to sneak its way in as the 7th seed. Regardless, there will be playmakers out there that will test this Ravens secondary. And going into the postseason, I don't know how you gauge level of worry, but right in that same vein, right in that same level, I'd put Brandon Stevens and Justin Tucker. Those are two areas that, sure, have absolutely improved down the stretch. But I'm not sure how confident I am and that they may not come back to bite the Ravens at some point over the course of the next few weeks. Speaking of confidence, this dude doesn't lack any of it. He sure plays, or at least he plays like he doesn't. Nate Wiggins, thinking of another former first rounder in Zay, who of course is dealing with a knee sprain. His status is unknown for Super Wildcard Weekend. But on 63 targets, Nate Wiggins completed his rookie season not allowing one touchdown. Of course, he hauled in his first career pick 6 just yesterday against Cleveland, jumping the route on Bailey Zappi. And how about the numbers? The 3rd lowest passer rating allowed, 51.8. The lowest catch rate allowed across the NFL, 43.6%. And as I mentioned, he gave up 0 touchdowns all year long. This is a player who had a few rookie moments this year, no question. A couple DPIs that were head scratchers. And he was picked on at times, but I think about the play of the year maybe for Nate. when he went toe-to-toe with CeeDee Lamb as Dallas was driving in that Week 3 game and came up with a big-time forced fumble. CeeDee Lamb's a top 5 wide receiver by most metrics. Nate playing in his 3rd career game, showing you a little bit about what his MO is at that time. And that certainly proved to just stack as he stacked game after game after game. Jimmy did mention during yesterday's conversation that he'll have to make a few business decisions with his body just because of how lean he is, a slender frame. But I trust the staff. I trust the Ravens staff to get this guy in the right mindset in the offseason and strength train. And we know they've made a ton of upgrades and adjustments over the years since letting Steve Saunders go. But Nate Wiggins, make no mistake, his future is really, really bright. And what a fun year it was to watch number 2 do what he does well. This was pretty fun last night as well. Kyle Van Noy hit the 12 sack mark, 12 and a half to be exact. And that triggered a $250,000 contractual incentive. He tweeted out a photo of his celebration last night. Love KVN. He gave away 4 tickets, by the way, to this game for fans. Literally, just totally randomly online. And he tweeted, making money and winning LFG, back-to-back division champs. 12 and a half sacks to finish the regular season. Sheesh. Now we lock in for these playoffs. It's hard to overstate Kyle Van Noy's importance to this team, the impact that his veteran savvy brings to the locker room, the young pass rushers, and of course his running mate, Odafe Owe, a fellow outside linebacker, also hits the double-digit sack category. That was the first time in his career he did so. Congrats to number 99. They picked up his 5th-year option this offseason. He's been a late bloomer, development-wise, but I think this all really stems back to Chuck Smith and the Ravens outside linebacker coach that John Harbaugh brought in a couple years ago. He has transformed this group. And by the way, for the first time since Doomerville and Suggs years ago, the Ravens have 2 pass rushers who hit the double-digit sack category, and that is Kyle Van Noy and Odafe Owe. And this is coming off a year, of course, where they led the trifecta across the league. Never been done before. Finishing the year as a defense, 1st in points allowed, 1st in sacks, and 1st in takeaways. This year, they're scheduled to finish top 2 in overall sacks. And I think that's one of those areas that you have to give John Harbaugh credit and tip your cap. Hiring. He is a great hiring manager. He cultivates talent. And I think a non-traditional hire in Chuck Smith, who didn't really have any traditional coaching experience under his belt, that has paid dividends. So much so, look at where the savvy vet found himself going into today in terms of sack leaders league-wide. Trey Hendrickson had a great finish to his season for Cincinnati, and he will be this year's sack king, 17 and a half of them to be exact. Myles Garrett finishes with 14. The Ravens kept him relatively in limbo. But Kyle Van Noy, top 3, 12 and a half. And when you think about how team-friendly his deal is, having signed an extension, that is a win for Eric DeCosta. That is a win for the Ravens defense. And hopefully for Kyle's sake, it'll be a win for him because he's proven that he's still got a lot more miles left on those NFL tires of his. I appreciate you guys for being here. Over 800 of you concurrently watching on this late afternoon. We will have, of course, the 425 games coming up any minute. And the one that we're going to be watching is Chargers-Raiders. Why? Well, I think you guys know what's at stake at this point. But before we can make our plans accordingly coming up next weekend, this is why we're watching it. Chargers beat Vegas, and the Ravens will host the Steelers for a second time in under a month. If the Chargers lose to Vegas, the Ravens will host the Chargers. That'll also be for the second time this season, not hosting, but playing the LA Chargers. So that's what we have coming up at 425. And I've got a little bit more work to do. As much as I want to open up those guest lines, Jewel, unfortunately, I got to jump. So thank you guys for dropping by. I hope you enjoy the 425 slates. Who knows? You might see me again tonight. I'm just hanging around. It's a very rare Sunday off, of course. Although these Saturday games, man, are starting to pile up, and there's rumors that Ravens Steelers could be a Saturday primetime game as well coming up next week. Selfishly, I don't want that to happen, but it is Lamar, and it is one of the front-runner candidates for NFL MVP. So don't be surprised if the Ravens are sitting in the driver's seat and are asked by the NFL to play in the primetime slot, which always makes for challenges when you're trying to create content. But hey, what are you going to do? Thanks to Preston Automotive Group for supporting the channel and continuing to sponsor this show. Thanks to all of you for dropping by. If you haven't already done so, you want to donate to the program, goes directly towards the daily efforts to build this thing. You can do so through Venmo, Cash App, or the YouTube Super Chat feature. And I will catch up with you guys tomorrow, if not before. The 425 games are starting right on time. I got you ready to roll. The 1 o'clock slate, yawn, are over. Let's go enjoy it and figure out who the Ravens will be hosting in a 3 versus 6 seed matchup coming up on Super Wild Card Weekend. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll catch up with you soon.